Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 145. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And today, we're back in class. It's the end of the semester, and it's time for everyone to figure out what their grades are going into the holiday season.
It's time to figure out who's in trouble.
We also work on anime timeline, where it takes like 5 real-life years to get one semester done of the anime. It's one of those anime where like they've got like 12 Christmas season episodes because they happen every year in real life, but it's still the same semester.
I mean, it makes sense. We're, basically VTubers, which is like anime on YouTube.
It's true. Give me that VTuber money. All right, let's find out how good all of these students have been.
Sounds good. Who's going home and getting the belt?
Death card, but it has nothing to do with the actual report card. It's just how Papa shows love.
It's because it's a Thursday.
All right, so for this one, let's just go in normal order. Let's start with Space Marines, and let's review everybody's report cards.
All right, so I guess the assignments that were given were the Rhino, the Knight, the Dreadnought, Cannon Fodder, Terminator, Tank, Sniper, Cavalry, and
the Geneva Suggestion.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
So for these, Space Marines were pretty much the example student for most of the semester.
Yeah, they were a bunch of here's what everybody else is being graded off of, essentially.
Yeah, the curve decider.
So those are like, the perfect grade that everybody else is trying to emulate. They did pretty well because of that.
They also had some slip-ups, though. Cavalry, Knights, and Cannon Fodder, not great grades. As soon as you take Space Marines out of their comfort zone, they start having their grades drop off a cliff.
Yeah, especially Cannon Fodder. They barely scraped a passing grade.
They phoned that one in hard. You can tell that they were hanging out at the movies, forgot they had to actually do homework. So it did bring their average down a bit, which is shocking because they got 4 A+ just for being like the example student for half of these. But they ended up with a B+ overall for the semester, which I feel like is going to sting a little bit, seeing as how many A+ they had. They probably hoped they were going home with an easy A-. And if they hadn't screwed up so bad on Cannon Fodder, they might have.
Yeah, it is one of those, like, one missing or complete screw up actually does matter. There's only 9 of these assignments right now, so like each one is a pretty big impact. But I mean, a B+ is still, I'd say, a good grade still, right? Not the full A student, perhaps.
Yeah, let's move into Sisters then. Sisters had an uphill battle. They had a really rough start. B- with Rhino, D with Knight, C with Dreadnought. They didn't do great on Sniper either with a D. But then they had some really nice A's and B's for Cannon Fodder, Terminators, Tanks, Cavalry, and their Geneva Suggestion. So overall, they end up with a B-, just scraping by. It could have been a real disappointing grade for them if they had slipped any lower, though.
Yeah, this definitely was one of those, like, at the end of the semester, they were looking at the grade going, oh shit, I'm in trouble. I guess I should really try. And it's good to see that when they really put their mind to the task, they can do it. And managed to pull it back up to a B-, which is respectable.
I really think their A+ on their Geneva Suggestion really got them through at the end.
Definitely.
Shall we talk about the Golden Boys and how they didn't do so gold?
Yeah, Custodes. Honestly, you didn't really have many good points.
To be honest, it's shocking. They're so popular due to their charisma in the school. You wouldn't realize that they're kind of a class clown who like barely scrapes by the definition of C's get degrees, but they managed to pull off a B- just with Sisters, scraping it just over the line due to their Geneva Suggestion at the end.
Again, another one of those, like, at the end they like just figured out how to get where they need to be, but at the start it wasn't too bad. Like, Rhino C+ isn't good, Knight B-, Dreadnought B-. Those are like C's still get degrees, man, and like that's fine. And then they got the Cannon Fodder, and D+ is not helping.
Snipers also didn't help them at all.
Yeah, again, one of those, like, if you fail any particular assignment, dude, it's not good for your end grade, so don't do that. But I mean, a B-, like, it's not the worst, but not what you would expect out of Custodes, really. Like you said, the expectation is that like they're so charismatic and like just good at what they're doing, kind of thing. Well, they're gonna have to try a little bit harder.
Now, shall we talk about one of our lower grading kids?
Yeah, Grey Knights, this actually is like the real C's get degrees, man. There's no outstanding, like you didn't decide to, oh, I'm particularly awesome at this, I'm gonna A+. Or like at the end, hey, I really need to up my grade. Let's try a little bit harder. Everything is basically C's and B's, and then Cannon Fodder is an F and Dreadnought is D. It's not looking good.
No, it really isn't.
And there was no like expectation of it being good either as we were going through.
It's more shocking given they have the baseline of being a Space Marine, but it could be the fact that they were trying not to copy homework. We might see them improving as they settle into the class.
That is true. It is one of those, a lot of submissions were not just, let me borrow Space Marines, but I'll make it mine and like edit like a couple sentences here and there kind of thing, or a couple different like, oh, I'm going to change the helmet, which I mean does mean that they tried, and that's how you learn. So hopefully that learning process continues and they'll improve, but a C is not particularly great.
So moving into AdMech, this one I felt like it was exactly where it was going to land. Your classic nerd who just refuses to get their homework done right. Then they get the shock halfway through when they start doing their mental math on what they've got to get in order to pull off even like a B- to not go home and get beaten.
Right. It's one of those like, oh, I really need like perfect grades on the next couple assignments or I'm in trouble.
And they really did. They started off pretty rough and then had to pull off some A's in a row at the end to get it back.
I mean, just not submitting something for a night is like, if you don't submit a piece of homework, you're kind of screwed. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are on everything else.
Especially given your giant robots that you have access to in the lore. If only there were some robots that you could play with on the tabletop.
If they were able to submit a decent grade on that one, AdMech would have been one of our better students, but they didn't, so B-.
They are lucky they got it up at the end. It was that last 3 A's in a row that really got them up there.
Yeah.
From the AM to the AM, we have Imperial Guard.
Yeah, Astra Militarum. Honestly, not bad. Like, not too many real bad grades. They submitted an assignment for everything. The Dreadnought was not optimal.
It was a rough pick. Yeah.
But everything else was pretty solid. B's, B+, and they had several A's, a couple A+. I mean, Cannon Fodder, they became the template essentially.
Honestly, you're right. Knight, Cannon Fodder, Tank, Sniper, Cav, all of them A's. It really did help keep their grades high. They never failed to submit something, partly due to their massive range. But yeah, I think their real slip-up was Dreadnought, which was the very beginning. And I think from meta level, they may have gotten a higher grade if we had graded differently at the time, but we needed to change the curriculum after the first series of grades.
That is true. Didn't really think about that, but I mean, that's life, man. Well, yeah, I mean, a B+ is still pretty solid, and like, I almost want to just give them the A-.
It's close to where if they were to come in after class and argue their Dreadnought grade early on, because that was kind of a BS assignment that started the semester off, but it was a good one to scare the kids. Yeah, they might be able to argue their way up to an A- for the semester.
Yeah, I think it really would be one of those, like, it's close. I feel like we could give it to them. An A-. It's pretty good. B+ is still solid, though. What do you think? Do we give it to him?
All right. Yeah, I'll let him argue it up to an A-.
Well done, guard. I guess let's move on to one of the problem children in the class.
Unfortunately, it's the problem child of the class. Imperial Knights.
No expectation of them doing well, but the real question is, did they pass? That's where we're like, ooh, let's figure it out.
And unfortunately, they did not pass.
Yeah.
We have trouble getting them to show up to class some days.
And the few times that they do show up and actually submit assignments, not great.
Yeah, I think the only time they've ever scored above a B is on the Knight episode, which is really weird.
I can't imagine why.
I think they did really well on that first Dreadnought assignment and then thought they could coast, and they could not. And they just did not course correct over the semester. Lots of C-minuses when they showed up to class, lots of skipping class. You just flunked out the whole semester, and it's going to be a retake.
It's rough to do it, but I mean, if you don't show up and even like really try, there's not much we can do. Sorry, you failed. Gonna have to try again. It's just how it is. Show up to class more often.
And the joking submission for your final, that was a rough gamble that did not pay off.
Funny, kind of appreciated it, but at a serious level, no.
Now the question is, do we let them argue their way to a D- so that they can pass and move on with the rest of the class for next semester? They were close. They're in the very high 50s.
It's not so difficult for them to like show up and be like, hey, I really tried. You know, I screwed up maybe a couple times, but like then I really put my full effort into it kind of thing. But like they didn't even show up for the sniper one, which was later in the semester. Like you should have known you weren't doing particularly great kind of thing. It's tough because like you never want to fail somebody.
I think as a holiday present, we'll bump them up.
We'll just give it to them.
Yeah, because it's unfortunate to have to fail one of the students. We'll let them pass with that D-. It was real close to not needing a bump on the magic grading end from your teacher, but we'll step in.
Just nudge one of the numbers a little bit and call it good.
Yeah, but this is a D- that's coming with a lecture. Like, sit them down. There's some raised voices and really hammering home that they cannot expect this to work next semester.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's the Imperium. Do we want to do Chaos Knights?
Sure. While we're on the subject, we can use them as an example when we're berating Imperial Knights, because Chaos Knights got a D- without needing to actually have their grade bumped.
Though they still are not stellar student.
Oh God, no.
They're still getting a slight lecture of show up to class and do assignments. You also didn't submit the sniper. Please do assignments, even if, you know, you end up having C's. That is still good for, you know, learning essentially.
You got to learn that to coast, you have to at least put in minimal effort. You can't put in no effort in coast. Coasting is about minimal effort.
Right. But they had enough solid grades that they got the D-, and we didn't even have to like nudge the numbers a little bit.
No grade fudging required. It's almost like being slightly funnier at Geneva's suggestion put him over the line, which was just the cherry on top.
Hey man, that's how it be sometimes.
Now, the rest of Chaos's assignments, especially some early ones, had to get some numbers refigured out due to how earlier grades were handed out. So after reviewing the tapes, these will be the corrected grades for all of Chaos. Starting with CSM, not a bad show.
No, honestly, a bunch of A's, couple A pluses, only one poor show.
They probably would have gotten away with that A- if it hadn't been for the damn sniper. The D on the sniper, it really brought the grade down to a B+. It's unfortunate.
But yeah, I mean, overall, quite a good showing. Looking forward to what they can continue doing, and hopefully next time they'll get that actual A-, maybe even an A. They can shoot for the stars.
Yeah. Them matching Space Marines, it's an interesting fact. I wonder what it could mean between Chaos Space Marines and Space Marines having very similar homeworks the whole way through.
That's true. I'm sure it was all on the up and up. It's fine. It's fine.
Alright, so getting into the nerdiest of Chaos, the Thousand Sons, much like AdMech, suffered from that nerd who tries to coast on homework and has to get smacked around a little bit with some bad grades.
Yeah, started off pretty solid. Bunch of A's, A pluses.
But then, for the tank, they tried to be ultra clever and submit Magnus. Why'd you try that stunt? You knew it was wrong. You had so many better options.
Yeah, you knew you weren't getting away with that one.
No, so...
And then after that, like, they didn't really, like, fully recover and get to, like, the back.
They went to full coast mode. They realized the A was out of their range, and you just know that they were like, we're just coasting with B's, fucking doing my homework in the morning before class. The typical burnt out nerd.
Yeah, realizes that the A's out of expectation, so, like, B's fine. All right, then I just need to get a B on everything else. Easy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that landed them a B overall, falling below CSM, Space Marines. Our next one, the shock to us.
World Eaters.
This one comes with an apology from the teachers. World Eaters being a bit of a clown, not the literal clowns, we'll get to you later, Harlequins.
But like they're not the most studious, book open at all times, really like traditional student.
No, just staring out the window waiting so they can go to football practice.
But
That said, sometimes your star football player is also a star student.
yeah, there's mostly A's. There's only the one real problem with Sniper.
Yeah, the D plus on Sniper, that was an off week for a lot of people looking at it.
Yeah, that was a tough assignment. That's fair.
But other than that one screw up, they did fantastic the entire semester. And it got them an A minus at the end of the day, which it's a shock.
Which is a good grade. Like, well done.
It puts them in contention for the top of the class with a couple other students.
Completely unexpected, but it is a good unexpected. It's nice to see that, you don't have to be the most traditional looking student to still get a good grade.
And honestly, it should act as a wake-up call for Thousand Sons sitting next to world leaders there.
That's true.
And seeing the jock outdo you in grades and in sports, and to realize that you're probably a high school burnout.
Get your shit together.
Get your shit together, Thousand Sons. Shit's not going to fly in college. You're going to end up with a physics degree, and then look where you're going to end up.
Unemployed. All right. Let's move on to Death Guard.
Do you want to talk about it? So Death Guard, again, much like Thousand Sons, lots of coasting with bees. They might have actually outdone Thousand Sons, but they tripped up real bad, had a couple bad submissions right at the end there. They were out sick. Weird, I know. So they didn't end up submitting anything for the Sniper, and then they were still feeling off for Cavalry. It's unfortunate. Sometimes, that happens.
It really does kind of suck because, they have mostly A pluses, B pluses. It's just, again, like you can't not submit an assignment and still expect an A at the end. Like that's just not how it works.
They didn't even get a doctor's note. You can't just claim you were out with the flu or giving people the flu or whatever they were trying to say.
It was kind of ambiguous. But even with that, they still ended up with a B, which not bad.
Unlike our next one.
All right, Demons. Realistically, we were looking at like potential failure, D- territory.
They were doing rough.
Things weren't good for several of the assignments.
That said, extra credit helped you out a lot. The way extra credit worked is if you failed to submit an assignment or failed one, it nixed it off the final grade for the actual grading calculation. So their extra credit they earned during Cavalry saved their asses and got them up to a C+. Demons being the coaster seized get degrees individual kind of matches expectations. It's just, man, was it a bumpy semester for them.
And definitely a few notes of really you need to submit your assignments and don't rely on extra credit because this could have been terrible.
You didn't know the extra credit was coming either. Like, you were just flying by the seat of your pants and saw the easy way to get it.
It worked out for you with a C+, but don't expect it in the future. But that rounds off Chaos. It's Xenos time.
Yeah, so Xenos has a lot of really good students, it turns out. It's kind of shocking given how much we had assignments where the automatic A student was either Space Marines or another Imperium faction.
That is true, but a few of the factions have quite big ranges, so that can help. At least so that they don't miss an assignment. If you're able to submit something, that's always good. And if you're able to get, a C on the bad grades, then it can work out okay. But let's take a look at Aeldari, because they're kind of confusing given the whole Harlequin thing.
Yeah, so the way we did this was we took the better between Aeldari and Harlequins. Oh, shit. So, due to an unrelated aside that had to get cut out of this episode, I would really like to remind you that you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/solely-singleton so that I can get the fuck out of the automotive industry. But back to our regularly scheduled topic.
Aeldari and Harlequins are basically being smashed together because that's what is happening. And we just picked whatever worked best. We're not going to pick the worst submission. That seems needlessly cruel. Which gives Aeldari a pretty good submission overall. They gave a submission for every assignment. Good start.
And a couple where they slipped up, Harlequins had their back and got the A.
About the only one that is a real problem was the Rhino with a D+, but like it was still D+, C- level is like you can recover from it a bit if it's the only one. It also helps that they got a couple extra credit.
They did.
Cavalry and Harlequins.
Yeah, they chose the right time to get lucky. So a lot of their more poor grades were taken out of the equation, as it were, and they ended up scoring a very clean A-, damn close to an A, almost guaranteed best in the class.
Very impressive. It feels like cheating by having like two people in one. But it's not for us to make that decision, apparently.
James, if you're out there listening, clowns, please.
Clowns, please.
Send in the clowns.
All right, so Aeldari did pretty well. They're probably the best student in the class. What about Drukhari?
Yeah, it's what you think. The doodling in the back of the class edgelord goth kid did manage to walk away with a higher grade than I had internalized them as getting. They had a very rough start to the semester with a lot of D's and C's, but at the end of the semester they really pulled their grades up and they managed to walk out of the class with a solid B, but almost entirely carried on the back of getting some A's on the final end of the semester here.
Yeah, they did pretty well on the Cavalry and Geneva suggestion. They had definitely a rough start, like you said, with the Knight and even the Dreadnought. A bit tough, but again, they submitted an assignment, even if it didn't end up well graded, which, yeah, once you pick it up at the end and get those A+, an overall B. Not bad, Drukhari. I think you were also surprised.
As for a kid who was just the sleeper hit of the semester, Genestealers, who started off with some really rough grades, pulled it off through having A's for almost the entire back half of the semester, slamming A+ down in a row, snipers, cav, in their final exam, getting some extra credit to wipe off one of their early bad grades, and proving to us in a later video that we had screwed up on their original homework assignment once, getting a C instead of an F, which was well done, guys, but an A- for Genestealer Cults.
Which wasn't expected, but
the extra credit point, they got 1, and it saved them, because the failure to submit that night homework would have plummeted this A- down.
Oh yeah, that would have been very brutal. But given that they did so well on all the submissions that they actually decided to turn in, yeah, A-. And again, I mean, it was good to see that, you know, the student came in and really had solid argument against a grade that we gave them. You know, it's like, hey, if you disagree with something and you have a legitimate reason behind it, things can change. And yeah, well done, Genestealer Cults. Okay, Tyranids, one of the more confusing students.
A student who can't decide if they're an A student or a D student, and really like just doing homework 5 seconds before it's due.
It didn't start off great for you, though, with the Rhino being just a failure.
No, they did great on the Dreadnought episode. Knights, due to, again, a grade correction later, they really did have a Norn emissary in the back pocket. Those were pretty good, but the Rhino early on was a real big miss, and then they just phoned it in near the end of the semester.
Yeah, I think it was one of those, like, they weren't really paying attention to class anymore. They were already on break.
Yeah, by the time we got to snipers, they were thinking about what they were going to get for Christmas.
Which, given that you got a C overall, I'm not sure that Christmas present is going to be particularly amazing. But hey, I mean, a C is still solid, right? It's still going to get you a degree. You keep passing, so I guess you got what you wanted, or something like that. It's hard to tell with Tyranids if they really wanted to get a better grade, though.
Sometimes I wonder if a student is in class because they want to learn, or if they want to eat the other students.
Yeah, shouldn't be a question, but this class is interesting. Let's move on to the robot parts. Necrons. Probably not going to eat other students, but what about your actual grades?
They barely pulled off a B- over the semester. Their final, they needed that A that they scored. They could have had a C straight up if they had done a mediocre final exam here.
Yeah, which, I mean, not surprising really, because most of their grades were C's with a couple A's, right? Like, you pulled a couple A's together and did well on some assignments, but you didn't really fuck up anything.
No, they were a very consistent C student the whole way through.
It's appreciative impressive that, you've got the core concepts together, and then, you can really push for better with some of the A's coming in on those assignments, like the Geneva suggestion and, even the Knights. So a B-, not bad.
As for one of the newer students who transferred in the semester before this one, Votann, it was a rough semester. Now, I know it was rough coming into the school year and not knowing anyone. There's an established clique system that you're just not part of. You don't really know any of the teachers from past years. It's rough.
I mean, you're just generally still settling into the environment. Outside of class, you have their own problems that you're trying to solve.
You moved and you only brought half of your faction with you.
Yeah. But it wasn't terrible overall.
No, they managed to pull off a C in the end, but it is a shaky C. There's a lot of D's and F. They pulled off some A's and B's to make up for it. This is not a consistent C student. This is an inconsistent cries for help early on that stabilized more in the B range by the end of the semester.
Yeah, hopefully that means that they're kind of actually getting used to the environment, settling in, and we can expect better things in the future. But yeah, hopefully you do a little bit better, because I think you can get there, Votann. A C is fine, but you can do better.
Now,
we already talked about the jock world eaters being shockingly studious. Let's talk about Orks.
The prize running back as opposed to the prize quarterback. Also a shockingly competent student.
This one kind of expected after a few of the submissions.
Yeah, we really started to feel about halfway through the semester that they knew how to get their A's.
Yeah. From a cursory glance at their behavior in class, there would have been oh, you're probably not going to do particularly great here, but you'll figure it out. And then a couple of submissions come in and it's oh, all right, you do actually, you know how to do homework. I'm well, bunch of A's everywhere.
They got an A or an A- on everything up until the tank.
Which was a B, which isn't bad.
Yeah, it was a fine slip. Not the worst. It's not like they didn't show up to class that week. They showed up every single week. They submitted their homework constantly. Their worst grade was a C+, which honestly, I envy that from my own school career.
That's true. And even submitted extra credit. They did work during the class and absolutely deserve a good grade.
So they ended up with an A- and a high A- at that.
To a point that I almost want to bump them up to the straight A, but it's tougher to bump up a perfect grade as opposed to oh, you're struggling a little bit, let me help you out.
Yeah, and we've got 4 students who are all at A- at various levels of almost pure A territory.
Yeah.
And I think that means we're doing pretty okay here.
Yeah, it's clearly not our fault for the students that didn't perform quite as well.
And most of the class is sitting at B with some C's. And then we've got the problem children with the Knights.
But yeah, well done, Orks, and definitely continue to, put the effort in. It shows that when you're showing up to class, submitting assignments, you can get good results.
And then rounding out the students who were here for the whole semester, we've got the Ta'au. They managed to make it all the way through class with a B+. I honestly early on thought they were going to be A material.
It was close. It felt pretty locked in of high B+, hopefully an A- kind of thing. Just don't slip up.
Yeah, but they screwed up on the final. They don't understand how to commit a war crime.
Yeah, that D- really set them back.
Yeah, so they ended up with a B+ in the class. It's unfortunate, but I think they've got an A in them next semester.
Yeah, because other than that D-, everything was an A, B+, with that Terminator being a C+. Little slip up, not too bad. It was recoverable, and then, yeah, that D- at the end really got them.
If it hadn't been for screwing up on the final, we could be looking at the top student or the near top student. It's unfortunate. You can't give up before the class ends. If we can hammer something home to you kids, it's you gotta make sure you finish the job.
That is true. You gotta cross the line.
Yep, can't get 80% through the semester and just hope that you'll end up with the same grades the whole way through. Gotta finish it out.
But we did have one more student join in the middle of the semester. So Agents of the Imperium, many of the assignments you didn't submit because you weren't here during the class, but for the ones that you did submit, many of them were pretty good. One of them was not.
Yeah. It's shocking how good of a student you were coming in. It's weird we still have not received from your last school the credit that you should have earned from already having covered the subjects of Rhino, Knight, Dreadnought, things that I'm sure you have that I'm not going to go back and find out how good or bad you are at these assignments, but we're just waiting on the paperwork to come through for those. But for what you did in this school, you did pretty good. The cavalry, look, art class is not your thing.
Yeah, that is fair. It was a different style of assignment for many. It sucks that you got such a low grade for your overall report card, but I mean, even with that D-, everything else being, A pluses or an A-, you're looking at a B+, which is pretty good for a transfer student.
Hopefully the new school, you've acclimated to your new school, and next semester you're an outstanding student. Given the rest of this class that's going to be your peers, I'm not going to have high hopes for that, but you never know.
I mean, so far they've done a good showing. There's some expectation that they'll continue to submit good assignments, and we'll see Agents of the Imperium potentially breaking into the top of the class next semester. That would be nice. But overall, a couple problematic students, mostly good.
I think we've got a pretty good class here.
Knights, please take our talk seriously and pick yourself up and really commit to doing the work.
I am hoping that you find a career path that'll work out for you long term, Knights.
Yeah, this was fun. I mean, one, it's just fun to do these types of assignments and stuff like that, but it was a good look back and see how everybody's kind of stacking up against the other factions.
Yeah, mainly against Space Marines with how we tend to do these thumbnails and episode topic names.
Yeah, but I mean, also, there's a billion Space Marine units. There's always something we can compare to.
And the minute we do non-Space Marine ones, they start crumbling as you realize how one note they are. They've got 100,000 versions of the exact same one thing.
Hey, how about that new lieutenant?
I'm so glad we got a lieutenant for Christmas this week. We recorded this slightly early, so I'm making a couple-week-old joke here about a certain lieutenant from a certain video game getting a new version of Legends as a data sheet so that he's tournament legal but Legends.
That's weird, but
what?
Fine.
You know what? Space Marines, you got a B for the semester. That annoyed me.
I think the grades were already submitted, but
you'll get a B for the first assignment as the cap.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna grade everybody's Primaris Lieutenant, and Space Marines will still only get a B with their 45 submissions.
But we submitted so much extra credit.
Yes, but it bores me.
No, there was no extra credit on this assignment. Sorry. That wasn't available.
All right, so that does it for the topic this week for us. Next week, we will be going into the holiday season where you will get a final episode from us that is the patron-decided episode for this season, which is Every Faction's Cereal. It won the patron poll by a single vote. One vote.
I mean, I'm kind of excited. I feel like we're going a bit deep on it.
We pre-planned this for a month.
Yeah. We'll see how it ends up. Hopefully we didn't big brain it too much.
It will take place in the Grading Every Faction cinematic universe. Baby Groot will return.
But yeah, after that, we're going to take a week off. Oh, yay.
And then, yes, we get one glorious week off to ourselves for the week after. You will not get an episode that week. But if you miss us so much, for our patrons, if you're at the tier where you get bonus content, we've got a little bit for you. We may or may not have recorded a 4.5-hour bonus content earlier this week. I don't know how long the final cut is, but...
Yeah, on top of the normal, bonus content that's cut out of the episodes that we normally record, and that'll be put together, and got a couple other ones that we're recording as well. So
yeah, so if you're looking for a tier list of all the Zoomer words, I've got you covered this year.
I'm absolutely looking forward to that.
We're recording that right after this. Eric's thrilled about his evening.
And then we're back to normal on January 7th. We'll see about maybe releasing some bonus content for free patrons, but
we've already done that multiple times this season, and I need to stop baiting the hook and actually pull on it to get some ability to leave the fucking auto industry as my phone buzzes again.
But yeah, so that's the holiday season. It should be pretty interesting. And yeah, we'll be back on the 7th like normal.
Yeah, and I guess as one final shout out, since we have a Patreon at patreon.com/SullySingleton, where you can join great patrons like Chaos Heaven 234 and enjoy a bunch of bonus content in the next couple weeks. And if you pay us enough money on that Patreon, then we'll have to shout you out every month. Like these people: 100 Johnny,
3D Frank,
4K Fart,
Adrian Frank,
Alex Fuja,
Amists,
Another Hairy Sasquatch,
Ballad,
Bedlam's Nemesis,
Beth Jesus,
Biggs Dog 03,
Blubbles 180,
Bolters and Banter,
Cameron Cairns Baker,
Cameron R,
Carnivex,
Christmas. Oh no. I read Christmas.
I enjoy that. I understand how you got to there because you're like, okay, I know the first name. I got that one. What the fuck is this next one? Oh, smash it together. We get Christmas, right?
Yep. Christian Shurelius Vickland,
Christopher Gargliano,
Chromavale,
Chuck Mordock,
Craig Judge,
Cube 1359,
Daniel Field 5150,
Das Goopy,
Devin Voiles,
Dominic Colasico,
Drath Jennifer,
Edward Lawrence,
Ethan Gerard,
Ezelvor,
Gathering Clouds,
Geet,
Gyarados,
Happy Brontosaurus,
Infinite Fez,
It's a Beautiful Day,
Jack Gaming,
Jacob Gibson,
Jared DePerna,
Kalex,
Caden Moore,
Lucas,
Le Bloop Bloop,
Logan Benesh,
LSJ,
Madison Ramanama,
Matthew Tsushima,
Michael Melcher,
Mitchell,
Mixolodius,
Burnt Toast,
Moist Toast,
Monkey 218.
Morpheo 55,
Pierce would like everyone to know that Brain Rot won Oxford's Word of the Year. Spoilers, it's in the next bonus content.
This is unfair. I'm being abused already. Primarch Alucard,
Proteus 7331,
Coolin,
Retro Brave,
Ross Warlock,
Sarah Hansen,
Slaanesha's Sausage Emporium,
Struggle Bus,
The Marine Who Plays Tau,
The Tired EMR,
The Crusader 13,
The Fishboy,
Thrango,
Tom McGarth,
Vault Guardian,
Victoria Angel,
Weebay,
Werner Elindi Wallman,
and Why So Mad 2. Thank you so much for supporting the show.
but we also have producers who we have to thank every week. They are Blitzed Brain,
Brady C,
Brandon Janke,
Corvus,
The Red Gobbo Stole My Dragster to Deliver Gifts,
Demolition Man,
Dr. Lace,
Hugh Jacksman,
Yon Geisy,
Kiwi Fruitbird,
Nathan Seward,
NJ Harlan,
Noel,
North,
Pizza 00100,
Rock,
The Mailman,
Tricky is the one,
War Crimes Are Fun.
and War Game Simulator.
Thank you all so much as my phone once again buzzes and my blood pressure once again rises.
It just keeps going up. This is good for Bitcoin.
All right, well, that does it for us this week. We're out of here.
Sounds good.